I had this one couple come to me for divorce or for mediation. They didn't come to me to hire me as a lawyer. They came in. It was pretty early in my time mediating the way I do now. And we did what we do in mediation. We go through everything that has to be resolved. We everything we think through. They were a little more difficult than a lot of people I've mediated with, but it was pretty clear they both wanted to do what was best for their children. And I didn't have the sense during the mediation that they wanted to be enemies or anything like that. And so when we got close to the end of the day, they'd reached a settlement. And I did what I do at the end of the time when we reached a settlement. I went into my office to prepare the document they were going to sign that's called the divorce decree. While I was in there preparing that divorce decree, all of a sudden I hear raised voices. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? And before I could even get out of my office into the area where we were mediating, the husband had slammed some doors and he was gone. And the wife was crying and upset. And what had happened, I later learned, was that there was kind of an issue that they hadn't even brought up in mediation that was the kind of thing they couldn't talk about without getting into a fight. So they did. They got into a fight. And he showed a side of himself that he had not shown in the mediation. And it was a side that was kind of violent. I could see that this man could be pretty violent. And so I talked to the wife for a little while, and she decided that the best thing would be for each of them to hire lawyers and just go through the litigation process. And I really couldn't disagree with her because we'd spent the whole day working on this. And at the end of the day, it all blew up. And I was very sad about that because I pride myself on getting to conclusion with couples and having the mediation work for people. So I was disappointed as much as anything. We'd settled it and it had blown up. I'll assure you that has not happened since then, and that was probably about 10 years ago, so I've never had that happen since then, thank goodness. But I talked to the wife a few months later, maybe even a year later. She called me wanting to know if I could take over her case as her lawyer. Well, I couldn't. Once I've been the mediator, I can't be the lawyer because it's a built-in conflict of interest. I've worked with both people, and it's just pretty obvious that I can't then represent one against the other. So I couldn't, but I asked her how things were going, and they had each hired a fairly well-known law firm, good lawyers, people well-reputed, and at that point, she had spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 or $90,000 in legal fees, and the case still wasn't settled, wasn't resolved. They still hadn't had a trial, and she still needed a lawyer and was going to have to spend more money. And she believed that he had spent every bit as much money as she had spent. Most of the money was spent because one party, I can't really say, it may have been both parties, just decided to make life miserable for the other one. The children were suffering. They were teenagers. They couldn't have the kind of life they wanted. They couldn't invite their friends over because the other other parent in that situation would cause trouble. It was a horrible way for mediation to go. And I'm not telling you this to dissuade you from mediation, because I've had cases since then where it was very difficult for the couple to come to an agreement. But I learned from that one, and I've learned how to help people avoid those situations. And so I would say since then, maybe in the hundreds and hundreds of mediations that I've done, one or two didn't settle that day, but they end up settling 2 or 3 days later. Because as soon as they go out and talk to lawyers and find out how much it really is going to cost, they then decide, I don't want to spend that money. We need to get this thing done, and we need to finish with the mediation. So they give me a call and they say, go ahead and finish it up, and we're not going to hire lawyers. Better to start out that way to begin with and stay that way all the way through. And I've learned in all these years of doing these mediations how to help overcome those times when you are letting your emotions get the best of you. So come see me. Let me help you not spend a lot of money.